Hey, I'm Lynn.
And I'm Hannah. In case you don't know, we're the two lovely ladies nearest the exit. Those sitting nearby probably know us as the two obnoxious chicks laughing over an inside joke or drawing memes on our notes during class.
Despite this, we've genuinely enjoyed our time here, and it's actually influenced our perspective outside the classroom. You see, Hannah and I do a fair amount of gaming, and that's probably why we were interested in taking this class in the first place.
That's very true. As the class progressed, we actually started to see parallels from the class lectures with some of our favorite video game characters. And that's what has inspired this video.
So, today we're going to break down some elements from 3 different Nintendo franchises and hopefully relate them to the cultural or historical references that inspired the work.
Before we begin, I have a few warnings. First off, while we did record some of the footage used, we own no rights to any of the game material or music used in our video, and it all belongs to its respective creators, producers, and composers. Second, some of what we may show could be considered spoilers, or traumatizing, or downright cringy, so we apologize in advance. Cool? Cool. Shall we get started?
We shall.
Alright, those of you who had good childhoods are familiar with the Pokemon franchise, so we don't really need to explain a background.
Wait, but just in case there are those who didn't, Pokemon is basically a game where you run around a region, throw balls at monsters, catch them, train them up, and beat up other kids' monsters for money and fame. Come to think about it, there might actually be a plot too.
There is?
Regardless, it's actually a fun series that's captivated children and adults alike for many years now. Getting into our analysis, the creators of Pokemon drew heavily upon their homeland for in-game references. If we take a quick look at the first 4 regions, or generations, we can see they actually exist in real life.
The Kanto region in Pokemon Red and Blue is based off an eastern region of Honshu under the same name. Similarly, the Johto, Hoenn, and Sinnoh regions spanned areas of Kyushu, Sengoku, and Hokkaido.
That leaves not an area of Japan unexplored by the trainers of the Pokemon world.
It doesn't stop there. If you travel a ways into the Johto region from Pokemon Gold and Silver, you eventually come across beautiful Ecruteak City. Returning to our map, it's easy to see Ecruteak City stands as the equivalent to Japan's own Kyoto City. They not only share the same general map location, but both are depicted as large commanding cities that bridge the gap between history and the present.
Looking at Ecruteak's architecture, it's easy to see traditional Japanese flair. More specifically, Ecruteak is known for its twin brass and bell towers. In the game's story, we discover the brass tower was destroyed in a time of war, and its charred remains can even be explored by the main character.
After doing our research, it actually turns out the 2 towers have Kyoto counterparts. Kinkaku-ji, or the Temple of the Golden Pavilion, and Jinkaku-ji, or the Temple of the Silver Pavilion, stand proudly within Kyoto's city limits and act as its local twin towers. Surprising to none, the Golden Pavilion has actually burned down a number of times, the most recent being in 1950 by a crazed monk. Go figure.
Alright, now that we've gone over some of Pokemon's more geographic referencing, we'd like to turn our focus on one of the franchise's lesser-known games, Pokemon Conquest.
To give a quick background, Pokemon Conquest is the love child of Nintendo's beloved Pokemon series and the lesser-known Nobunaga's Ambition franchise. Although, if I were trying to explain the gameplay to somebody, I would compare it to Fire Emblem, but that's for later.
To be brief, Pokemon Conquest is an RPG that follows the story of a young warlord attempting to conquer the entirety of the region in order to summon the local god, Arceus.
Now, looking at this game through a historic lens, it's quite easily distinguished that this game represents Japan's Sengoku period.
To those who may have forgotten, the Sengoku period began in 1467, continued until 1568, and was defined as a time of great civil war throughout Japan. Daimyo, or feudal lords, were second only to the shogun in power, and they clashed regularly over territorial disputes.
This basically sets the stage for the entire game. You fight as a young daimyo, or warlord as they refer to it, in a historical Japanese setting and conquer as many other daimyo territories as you can with the ultimate goal of becoming shogun, and possibly even becoming closer to the gods.
The franchise wanted to get this idea out so clearly they even decided to plagiarize historically famous daimyo and bring them into the fictional world.
Recall Nobunaga, Hideyoshi, and Tokugawa, or as we learned in class, the 3 unifying daimyo? Yup, they too earned a spot on the roster, and they aren't alone. Altogether, over 100 characters in Pokemon Conquest get their namesake from real-life people. These include the daimyo themselves, their wives, children, tacticians, and retainers, or loyal samurai.
Basically, anyone important during Japan's medieval period was added. Phew, that's a lot of history depicted by goofy-looking anime characters fighting each other with monsters. Switching from Japanese historical referencing, we turn to one of the only modern game series that doesn't involve senseless murder. That is, of course, if you don't count sacrificing fish to a hungry beaver or pillaging an entire island for its rare beetles. Yep, you probably guessed it. We're talking about Animal Crossing.
Before we get too far into game explanation, we'd like to give a little background on creator Katsuya Ikuchi. Born in Tokyo, raised in the Chiba Prefecture, Ikuchi was hired by Nintendo in 1986 and shipped about 300 miles away to Nintendo's Kyoto HQ. It was there that he became inspired to create a game centered around moving to a new place. His experience was a mix of loneliness, wonder, and unexpected friendship, and he wanted the player to undergo similar emotions while playing his game.
With that in mind, Animal Crossing is a series that involves a human moving away from home to a country village. There, they meet animal villagers, work to pay off a mortgage, and renovate their ever-growing home. Shop, garden, and in the newest game, you can even organize a public works projects to build all sorts of cool things for your town.
In short, it's a slightly more exciting version than your actual life, only with animal neighbors instead of humans. And now, after taking this class, we realize the game itself centers around WA, or social harmony.
In-game, WA can be achieved in many ways, the biggest of which is forging close relationships with your animal neighbors.
It all starts when you hold a friendly conversation with them as you walk about your town. Sometimes they ask you for a favor, such as delivering a borrowed item or gathering a piece of fruit. And later on, as your friendship grows, they will invite you into their homes, visit you unannounced, and even throw you a party on your birthday.
The underlying theme is forming close relationships with those around you. As we learned in class, the idea of being associated with the group holds unprecedented importance within Japanese society. This holds true in Animal Crossing as well, and you are rewarded for working well with others and being a good member of your society.
As we look deeper into the ideals behind Animal Crossing, we can also catch glimpses of giri and tatame. Giri, or social obligation, is closely tied to the ideal of on, or that you must return a favor in some way. The villagers in Animal Crossing do this by always returning your kindness with a gift. It ranges anywhere from furniture to clothes, but regardless, if you do them a service, you can always expect them to return the favor. This, as we learned, ultimately helps maintain WA throughout your small town and helps alleviate some of the annoyance of having to spend 15 minutes trying to catch that one particular type of fish they wanted.
Tatame is a bit subtler in appearance. After talking to your villagers enough, they'll begin to ask you if certain rumors being spread about you are true. If you admit to it, they often appear shocked and claim you didn't seem like the type to be tight with money or running around late at night causing trouble. This would imply that your villager puts up a public face around the other villagers. However, within, they exhibit more unruly personalities that the game wouldn't allow you to partake in, but they still chose to hint at the traits.
Whatever the reason, it's apparent Animal Crossing takes a lot of Japan's socialization norms into account.
Social relationships aren't the only thing Animal Crossing intends for you to keep clean. The Japanese people often place high value on a healthy environment. This plays a huge role in Animal Crossing as well.
Whether rooted in Shinto beliefs or general Japanese standards, in-game you can only achieve some of the best items if you have a clean village. Perfect Town title is only awarded if you are diligent enough to keep your town weed-free for an extended amount of time and build a great deal of public works projects to keep your village or family happy.
Aside from cultivating gardens or relationships, Animal Crossing also puts a great deal of effort into celebrating Japanese holidays alongside internationally famous ones. Remember Setsubun, the bean throwing ritual?
Yes!
Well, it's in Animal Crossing too, and unless you were Japanese or extremely familiar with Japan as a child, you probably had no idea what was going on. That's okay. We didn't either, or at least not until taking this class. Setsubun isn't alone. Animal Crossing also incorporates Children's Day, Tanabata, Hina Matsuri, and the Cherry Blossom Festival into its list of holidays. Through this, they expose and integrate their culture among that of others in a way that just seems natural.
It's a nice little touch if you think about it. Gives the player a taste, and perhaps they go on to research the topic further, like we're doing.
Let's do this!
Did anyone in class notice any particular details from that clip that may pertain to Japanese culture?
How about the obviously Japanese naginatas or katanas versus the more traditional looking European swords?
I was also thinking that the forms of armor adorned by the differing armies was designed with distinct Japanese versus European styling.
That's also very true, and we hope by now everyone's gotten the idea behind this next game. Japanese versus European culture and historical styles. Later on, we will also dive a little deeper into some more social norm associations.
The clip you just watched was taken from the opening cutscene in Fire Emblem Fates. It's the franchise's newest original entry. While Fire Emblem is known for its traditional European medieval turn-based gameplay, this time around they decided to bring the theming a little closer to home. The storyline centers around the main character's decision to choose between the Norians,
aka the family who raised the protagonists,
or the Hoshidans,
whom they were stolen from many years ago. Choose your fate, only $19.99 per route. In case you couldn't tell, the Hoshidans are based off Japan's version of medieval warfare, and the Noorians are based off Europe's.
On a side note, the main character you play as is named Korin. However, in Japanese its translation is Kamui. If you remember, one of the vocab words from our first exam was kami, meaning god, or nature-related spirits. Spoiler, if you play the third version of this game, you come to find out Kamui is actually the child of the main god in this story, which we thought was an interesting play on words.
I guess one could say they really put the U in Kami. Get it? No?
Anyways, let's get back to the main topic.
Right. So we established Fire Emblem Fates as a glorified version of Europe versus Japan. In this case, Hoshido is depicted as a rich, light-filled country. It prospers economically and culturally. By contrast, Nor is a dark, grim place that gets little sunlight and struggles economically. Because of this, Nor and Hoshido act as rivals, with the Noorians offensively pushing into Hoshidan territory. The Hoshidans, in turn, usually speak and act defensively.
The difference in depiction can hint towards Japan's residual sense of superiority. In this case, the game producers decided to characterize Hoshido as the protagonist, and Nor as the antagonist country. This may signify that the Japanese view their own historical culture as better or more in the right than those of other countries.
I guess if you look at it in the light of the fact that in 1854, Matthew Perry practically forced his way into Japan and radically changed aspects of Japan's political, economic, and cultural systems. They have every reason to hold resentment against European idealism.
Well, it didn't help that Matthew Perry was also well beyond the Bronze Age when he made his way to Japan. You see, due to Japan's policies of isolationism, they had remained tied to the ways of old, even when surrounding nations had moved on technologically speaking.
So even if the two medieval armies of Japan and Europe never actually had the chance to clash, the analogy of Nor and Hoshido holds firm. Japan had its peaceful way of life invaded, and in a sense, destroyed.
Indeed. With that covered, let's go back to our main character, Korin. Stuck between the clashing titans, Korin is put into a precarious position. Should he return to Nor's dark embrace and work to smother Hoshido's light, or will he instead embrace the warmth and work to defend against the gloom? Regardless of choice, Korin will be shunned by the group he decides to abandon.
Where have I heard this before?
Perhaps in class a few weeks ago. Just recently we began discussing the Japanese school and workforce. Coinciding with the ideas we covered in Animal Crossing, Fire Emblem touches on another aspect of modern Japanese society, loyalty to one's affiliation.
Yup, and poor Korin is caught in the middle of a nasty situation. Is he loyal to the Noorians who raised him, or should he take his place alongside his bloodline who resides in Hoshido? He must choose, and by doing so prove his loyalty to one group while breaking from another.
This is an interesting spin on the Japanese school system, and comes from a society that spends nearly the entirety of its youth's education on molding them for a workforce based on loyalty and longevity between employee and employer,
aka Gambare.
Group affiliation and one's devotion is heavily valued in Japan. You are of a group before you are yourself. This makes Korin an outcast while choosing which group he'll devote himself to.
Of course, that means the group he abandons will hold him as dishonorable. Even worse, if the player chooses neither Nor or Hoshido, they could become a hikikomori. He will be shunned and abandoned by both groups completely, outcasted to live alone and struggle through the remainder of the story, or in the case of the Japanese, life.
Okay, perhaps that's taking it a bit far, but I think you've made your point clear. However, for the sake of our video, we're going to pretend that Korin chooses Hoshido.
Aww, but I like Nor better.
Alright, so like we clarified earlier, Hoshido is based on traditional Edo period Japan. They use traditional Japanese weapons, such as katanas, shurikens, and yumis, or Japanese bows. They also enjoy regional foods such as rice balls and miso soup.
That's all well and good, but how about something a little deeper? Has the name Hoshido reminded anybody of another vocab word we learned?
We're hoping the term Bushido popped into some of your heads.
Let's recap for a second. Bushido was the term used to describe a set of moral and behavioral values samurai were expected to hold. Bushido was a way of life for those who fought and served under its code. In a sense, it could be compared to Arthurian chivalry.
Yep, Bushido finds its roots in Confucius' teachings, but it's also considered to be heavily influenced by Buddhism and Shinto practices.
Some major aspects involved in Bushido are as follows: justice, courage, politeness, benevolence, honor, honesty, and finally, loyalty.
So, how does this relate to Fire Emblem? Well, we're gonna tell you. One word: Ryoma.
Indeed, this red-armored samurai-looking dude is literally the personification of Bushido.
Ryoma stands as the head of Hoshido shortly after the untimely death of the previous queen.
Now, we know what you're thinking. Samurai weren't kings, but usually fought for or under a shogun. Okay, so technically Fire Emblem twisted this a bit. But it's okay, because Ryoma acts as the samurai protecting his people versus a leader. So, how does he do it?
Well, for starters, he's extremely loyal to his subjects, and almost everything he does is for the good of his country. This loyalty is reciprocated too.
Ryoma also arguably acts with the most dignity and politeness when supporting with other members of the game. Ryoma is often depicted as the kind of character to help in any situation he finds himself in, and often seeks to alleviate and protect the people around him. He also strives to act as a good role model and teach those below him in any way he can.
That's an interesting point, because as we learned, when samurai found themselves without purpose in the years that followed the three unifying daimyo, they found a place within the new society as teachers, spiritual guides, and artists.
Or in short, idealistic members of the Japanese society, blueprint pawns for others to strive for.
Ryoma acts as a bridge between the two classes of samurai because he shows dignity and grace around his people, but that's no reason to count him out of a fight.
Indeed, if you choose to fight against Ryoma, you see the warrior aspect of his character. He is one of the final bosses, and a few more Bushido aspects arise when you meet him on the battlefield.
For starters, when Ryoma finds out you killed his sister, he grows furious at your actions. He shames you for your betrayal to your blood and underhanded tactic. Despite the rage, he decides to challenge you to a single duel. This, he claims, is an honorable way of seeking his revenge against you. Moreover, when the battle begins, you get this message stating Ryoma will wait 25 turns before attacking.
This can easily be interpreted as Bushido's code for rectitude or justice. Rectitude, as is defined by the samurai, is one's power to decide upon the course of conduct in accordance with reason, without wavering, to die when to die is right, to strike when to strike is right.
Against all the rage, Ryoma represents the idealistic circumstance for one to look past their own grief and retain an air of sophistication, and this moral follows him, even to the death.
I cannot fall into the hands of an enemy, so I fulfill a samurai's final duty. I'm counting on you.
Well, anyways, on that note, we think it's probably time to wrap this presentation up.
So, even if you've never played any of these amazing games or aren't into gaming in the first place, we hope you were able to take something away about the ways in which Japanese culture has influenced some of Nintendo's biggest franchises.
If you have any questions or criticisms, please make sure to comment below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more.
Wait, Hannah? We aren't YouTubers.
Oh, yeah. I forgot. Never mind.
Bye! Regardless is actually a fun series that's captivated children and adults alike for many years now.
No. Start over.
What?
Stop.
Oh, okay.
You're not saying this sentence the way it's supposed to be. Regardless, it's a series.
Regardless, it's actually a fun series that's captivated children and adults alike for many years now. That's what you sound like.
In a sense, it could be compared to Arthurian chivalry. It's gonna be gross. But it's okay, because Ryoma acts as the samurai protecting his people. Oh, I'm dead. Okay. Indeed, if you choose to fight against Ryoma, you see the warrior aspect in this character.
However, in Japanese, its translation is camely. Oh my god. I'm so sorry. The difference in depiction... I can't... Okay. Don't laugh. The difference in depiction can hint towards Japan's rich... Get your foot off my butt! You see, due to Japan's policies-wise... Gotta go fast. Alright, so like we clarified earlier, Hoshido is based on traditional Edo period Japan. They use traditional Japanese weapons, such as katanas, shurikens, and yumis, which are Japanese bows. They also enjoy regional foods such as rice balls and miso soup. Don't you mean jelly donuts?
Huh? Have a donut. That always cheers me up. Pika pika.
These donuts are great. Jelly-filled are my favorite. Nothing beats a jelly-filled donut.
We're hoping the term Bushido popped into some of your heads. Yep, Bushido finds its roots in Confucius. Oh, the one word I can't pronounce and Hannah wants to write it in the script. Okay, Confucianism. I say Confucianism. So how does this relate to Fire Emblem? Well, we're gonna tell you. One word. Lobster Man.
I cannot fall into the hands of an enemy, so I eat your own young.
Dad?
As he has the unwavering devotion of his retainers Kagero and Saizo.
Kagero. Kagero.
Okay.
What you say? That you only meant well, 'cause you did. What you say?